triple realm of ordered thought came first. A small beginning of immense ascent. The mighty wardens of the ascending stair who intercede with the all-creating world, there waited for the pilgrim heaven-bound soul. Holding the 1,000 keys of the beyond, they proffered their knowledge to the climbing mind and filled the life with thought's immensity.
Good morning. We're reading in Book 2, Canto 11, Kingdoms and Godheads of the Greater Mind. I believe we've come to page 264 at the break. So we're following Aswapati's journey through the inner planes. He's ascended quite far. He's now in the realms of the spiritual mind, and he'll be going through these in this canto. I was trying to map this to Sri Aurobindo's, philosophy and psychology. What are these realms in his other terminology? He doesn't use the same, terms to describe these realms here in Savitri. But it seems to me that it's likely that he's going to go through a kind of 3 stages, 3 steps of ascent. And they seem to be the higher mind, the illumined mind, and the intuition, which he describes in his philosophy. So, but these are spiritual planes of consciousness. They really are kind of descents of the higher realms of overmind and supermind coming down and expressing some of those truths in a form closer to mind and more accessible to human beings. Whereas overmind and supermind are for the most part beyond the possibility almost of human beings to ascend to those high levels of consciousness. These realms are more accessible to the spiritual aspirant. And he'll say that here even. So we've kind of gone through an introduction to this canto, the first section, and there he was describing those higher realms, like overmind, maybe supermind. He doesn't use those terms. He calls it ideal mind. And then he speaks of some descending rays coming from those realms. And also he speaks of beings, of gods there, who are creators of this world and of the lower realms of existence. For example, on page 261, he says, this is about 10, 12 lines down. In its vast ambit of ideal space, where beauty and mightiness walk hand in hand, the Spirit's truths take form as living gods, and each can build a world in its own right. So we see that there are gods there, creative of the worlds. And then at the bottom of that page on 261, he says, "Far are those realms from our labor and yearning and call, perfection's reign and hallowed sanctuary, closed to the uncertain thoughts of human mind, remote from the turbid tread of mortal life. But since our secret selves are next of kin, a breath of unattained divinity visits the imperfect earth on which we toil. Across a gleaming ether's golden laugh, a light falls on our vexed, unsatisfied lives. A thought comes down from the ideal worlds and moves us to new model, even here, some image of their greatness and appeal and wonder beyond the ken of mortal hope." So he's describing this descent coming from these ideal worlds through this spiritual mind. So now we can continue at the break, and he's going to describe now these 3 steps of this realm in between this ideal mind and our human mind. And perhaps, Prasad, would you like to begin? At the break on 264. Page 264.
A triple realm of ordered thought came first, a small beginning of immense ascent. Above were bright ethereal skies of mind, a packed and endless soul as if sky pressed sky, but rest against the void on bastion of light. The highest strove to neighbor eternity. The largest widen into the infinite. But though immortal, mighty and divine, the first realms were close and kin to human mind. Their deities shape our greater thinking's road. A fragment of their puissance can be ours. These breadths were not too broad for our soul to range. These heights were not too high for human hope. A triple flight led to this triple world. Although abrupt for common strength to tread, its upward slope looks down on earth's voice. On a slant, not too precipitously steep, one could turn back, traveling deep descending lines to commune with the mortal's universe.
Thank you. Let's pause there. So he begins by describing that there is this triple realm of ordered thought and a beginning of immense ascent. So it's a packed and endless soar, as if sky pressed sky, buttressed against the void on bastioned light. So it's as if going up, ascending, and is backed, supported by the void beyond on bastioned light. That's the kind of well-fortified, protecting light. And he says, but though immortal, mighty, and divine, these first realms were close and kin to human mind. So we see that they are divine. When Sri Aurobindo describes in letters, his letters on yoga about, let's say, the higher mind, he talks of it as being a realm of spiritual consciousness in which one senses the oneness of all. So I think even the great yogis and sages may be realizing this particular plane of consciousness, which is actually quite just beyond our human thought, beyond the intellect, above. But we see all of these realms of this higher spiritual consciousness are kind of permeated by the spirit, by the oneness of existence from above. And then he says, their deities shape our greater thinking's roads. So not only are these just states of consciousness, but also they're worlds in which there are beings or deities which live in those realms. And those deities shape our thinking, mind, and our world. You have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to share with you one observation I made, because Mother was saying that for Auroville, we need few people with the intuitive intelligence. So I was looking and doing some research about where is this intuitive intelligence, which deity is in charge of this intuitive intelligence.
Intuitive what? I'm not catching.
Intuitive mind.
Intuitive mind. Oh.
Yeah, which deity? There is a very God. Yeah, there is a very God who is responsible for the intuitive mind, and this God has got a dog as his Vahana. And I remember Shraddha always says that the intuitive mind and the dogs, they know how to sniff and find what is true. And so as a kid, I go to the temple and there was this God at the back of the temple with a dog, and I took a photo of it and I was doing some research about it. So I'm thinking that for all of it, it's very important that we are in touch with this intuitive mind. Maybe it's time to go and reach out to this very forgotten very God and get his cooperation. Just want to share this thought. I think his name is Bhavan. It is called the Saram. Yes, correct. It is called the Saram. What do you call it? It is called the Saram. The deity is called the Saram. Yeah, I think the very God should cooperate. Why we ignore the people if they are ready to help? This is my
Yeah, there's this image of these hounds of heaven, I think, and as you say, this intuition, it's like the hound who sniffs out and can find, so it finds the secrets and the knowledge behind things, like in the hidden realms of ignorance. It can search out and find the truths that are there hidden.
I have a little bit another question, if you can look at it. The highest drove to neighbor eternity, and the largest widen into the infinite. How it is this understanding of a neighbor eternity, the other neighbor eternity, the different eternities, and then to the infinite. How this, how to look at it, how to understand it.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I mean that there is a clear distinction between the eternity and the infinite here. There is a widening into the infinite and a heightening into eternity, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, we can think of time and space here, in a sense, a widening into space and this heightening of time into eternity. I don't know. So maybe that's something to do.
Higher level of eternity where it touches, it's about the 3 steps is the going to the sky. Was it after the first step? After the 3 steps is thing comes. Or is it after the first step?
Well, he's saying the highest of these, I think, of these. Yeah. So the highest strove to neighbor eternity, and the highest widened into the infinite. So they're touching that. He's saying that they were buttressed against the void on bastioned light. So they're leaning up against the infinite and the eternal.
What he says is we cannot reach higher than that. So I'm wondering whether he's talking about the first step he's describing now, or is after the third step, highest step, there it's bastion and we can't reach higher than that.
Well, yeah.
My question was actually also, then there are many neighbors eternities. And then the
Many neighbors
eternities,
eternity.
then is the infinite.
Yeah, the highest of these realms.
The question is more, there are many eternities.
Well, I don't know. Where we get many eternities, I don't know.
That means there are several layers of this world five.
Yeah, it's ascending through these very rarefied spiritual realms of light and consciousness. And they become more and more refined, rarefied towards spirit, eventually they lean up against the void on a kind of, in a light, in a bastioned light. But what's, I think, most important is that their deities shape our greater thinking's roads. So their influences come down here and support or inspire our highest seekings. And also that these realms were accessible, were not too broad for our souls to range. These heights were not too high for human hope. And then this next line also is a little enigmatic, mysterious. A triple flight led to this triple world. But I kind of interpret it as there are three kind of separate flights. These three realms are one on top of another, and so there's kind of three steps to the flight upwards, leading to these worlds, to this triple world. Anyway, they are accessible to us. So, B, would you like to continue? The mighty wardens.
The mighty wardens of the ascending stair, who intercede with the all-creating Word, there waited for the pilgrim, heaven-bound soul, holding the 1,000 keys of the beyond. They proffered their knowledge to the climbing mind and filled the life with thought's immensities. The prophet hierophants of the occult law, the flame-bright hierarchs of the divine truth, interpreters between man's mind and God's. They bring the immortal fire to mortal men. Iridescent, bodying the invisible, the guardians of the eternal's bright degrees, fronted the sun in radiant phalanxes. Afar they seemed a symbol imagery, illumined originals of the shadowy script in which our sight transcribes the ideal ray. Or icons figuring a mystic truth, but nearer, gods and living presences.
Thank you. Let's pause. So here Sri Aurobindo seems to give us an image of some beings, guardians of this realm, who meet the ascending soul, the aspirant, as he begins to rise into these levels of consciousness. And they assist and help this aspiring soul to enter. They intercede with the all-creating Word. They seem to bring an inspired knowledge to the aspirant, holding the 1,000 keys of the beyond. They offered their knowledge to the climbing mind.
They're waiting for the beautiful heaven-bound soul, for the soul
Right.
aspect.
It kind of awakens in me a sense of the Vedic knowledge, in a way that that has been given, or that was given to the initiates, and offering the secrets to the higher consciousness and how to ascend into it through this mystic knowledge that was hidden in the words through symbols. And there too, we think of those Vedic rishis, and were they ordinary men, or were they some kind of beings who had descended from above, like gods descending to give this knowledge to mankind? Or somehow, perhaps both, that these rishis opened themselves to these higher beings and then became channels or receptacles of their higher knowledge. So then he calls them the prophet hierophants of the occult law. So a hierophant is interpreter of sacred mysteries. The flame-bright hierarchs of the divine truth. Hierarchs, those who rule or have authority over sacred things. Interpreters between man's mind and God's. They bring the immortal fire to mortal men. Here also I'm thinking of Agni from the Vedas, this immortal fire. And he was the god in particular that kind of assisted the beings. He was the first that they worshipped because he would bring the greater knowledge and, in a way, the keys to the higher realms, representing this immortal fire, but also this fire of aspiration within us, awakening that. Iridescent, kind of glowing, bodying the invisible, the guardians of the eternal's bright degrees, fronted the sun in radiant phalanxes. So they're facing the sun, the higher spiritual realm, perhaps supermind, in radiant phalanxes. Phalanxes are more or less rows of beings. It's a kind of military position of rows of soldiers surrounded by shields, or more generally, a mass of people united in a common purpose. Afar, they seemed a symbol imagery, illumined originals of the shadowy script, in which our sight transcribes the ideal ray. So again, this ray from above, this ideal ray coming from supermind or overmind, but our sight transcribes that, translates it into something more accessible to mind. Or icons figuring a mystic truth, but near gods and living presences. So when he sees them up close, he sees they're actually beings from these realms. Naren?
March of friezes mark the lowest steps. Fantastically ornate and richly small, they had room for the whole meaning of a world, symbols minute of its perfection's joy, strange beasts that were nature's forces made alive and awakened to the wonder of his role, man grown an image undefaced of God, and objects the fine coin of beauty's reign. But wide the terrains were those levels serve. In front of the ascending epiphany, world time's enjoyers, favorites of world bliss, masters of things actual, lords of the hours, playmates of the youthful nature and child God, creators of creators of matter by hid stress of mind, whose subtle thoughts support unconscious life and guide the fantasy of crude events, stood there, race of young, keen, visioned gods, king children born on wisdom's early plane, taught in her school, world-making mystics play.
Thank you. So this first line, a march of friezes mark the lowest steps. So a frieze is a decorated border, usually like along the top of a wall, just below the ceiling. But here, it's as if there are steps climbing up these different realms, and among the lowest realms, there are these friezes, perhaps carved into the part of the step, the facing part of the step, symbolic, fantastically ornate and richly small. They had room for the whole meaning of a world, symbols minute of its perfection's joy, strange beasts that were nature's forces made alive, and waken to the wonder of his role, man grown in image undefaced of God. So carved in these friezes on these steps leading up to these higher stages of consciousness, he sees these beasts carved in the friezes, and also of man. But man here grown divine, an image undefaced of God. And other objects, the fine coin of beauty's reign. And this sentence, which I don't quite understand grammatically how it fits, but wide the terrains were those levels serve. It suggests that these steps are representing wide terrains, maybe even worlds. And then in front of the ascending epiphany, perhaps at the lowest end of these stairs, were world time's enjoyers, favorites of world bliss, the masters of things actual, lords of the hours, playmates of youthful nature and child God, creators of matter by hid stress of mind, whose subtle thoughts support unconscious life and guide the fantasy of brute events, stood there, a race of young keen-visioned gods, king children, born on wisdom's early plane, taught in her school world-making's mystic play. These are like young gods, creators that influence, that create our world, the occurrences that take place here. They support the unconscious life with their kind of intuition, by their stress of mind, by their thought, their creative thought. They guide the fantasy of brute events. The physical events taking place here on earth are guided by them. So they're close to earth. They are directly in touch with our world. They're the closest divine worlds, let's say, to our world.
These are not freezes, they are actual gods.
Yeah, these are actual gods. The friezes, he sees them like symbolically represented in these friezes, but when he looks closely, he sees that actually they're living gods. Sudha, yeah.
Archimations of the eternal truths, molders and measurers of fragmented space, they have made their plan of the concealed and known, a dwelling house for the invisible King. Obeying the Eternal's deep's command, they have built in the material font of things, this wide world's kindergarten of young soul, where the infant spirit learns through mind and sense to read the letters of the cosmic script and study the body of the cosmic self and search for the secret meaning of the whole. To all that spirit conceives, they gave a mold, persuading natures into visible modes. They lend a finite shape to infinite things. Each power that lives from the unmanifest, leaving the largeness of the eternal space, they seized and held by their prescient eyes, and made a figurant in the cosmic dance. Its free caprice they bound by rhythmic laws and compelled to accept its posture and its line in the wizardry of an ordered universe.
Thank you. So Sri Aurobindo is describing these gods, these creators of this realm of perhaps higher mind, and he calls them archmasons of the eternal thaumaturge. Thaumaturge is a performer of miracles. Here it's capitalized, almost suggesting the divine mystic or creator, archmasons. So they are building creation as a kind of translation, or here as a dwelling house for the invisible King, for the divine. They're molders and measurers of fragmented space, and they've made their plan of the concealed and known. Our world has things known and visible and obvious, and things concealed. And they've made this world a dwelling house for the invisible king, for the divine, obeying the Eternal's deep command. They have built in the material front of things this wide world kindergarten of young souls. And here I think he's referring to us, perhaps, to the beings on earth, where the infant spirit learns through mind and sense. So our souls are developing and slowly learning the ways of the divine, but first we have to move through our senses, our physical senses, gain some kind of indirect knowledge of our surroundings and of ourselves.
Do you feel the parallel between this and the flaming pioneers coming down the amber stairs of earth? Like they were up there and then they came down. Because there's the archmasons are here, and then these are the architects of immortality and barrier. There's it seems to me a kind of parallel that descent takes place. I don't know, what do you think?
My sense is not so much. I see this as more of a description of these gods in this realm of the intermediate spiritual mind, creative of our world as it is now. In the other passage, I sense it's more beings coming from above, higher beings descending, higher souls, let's say, descending from those higher realms into our realm. As if beings or souls from the supermental realm descending into our realm here on earth. I don't think that's what he's referring to here, because he's speaking about this kindergarten kind of child souls, that these are creating or developing here. So we're taught to read the letters of the cosmic script and study the body of the cosmic self. Of course, these beings are at a level where they're influencing the higher ascent of humanity into the spiritual consciousness and search for the secret meaning of the whole. So they're inspiring those souls on earth to seek for the spirit, for the higher truths. And then again, he gives a sense of how they are creative of everything in this world. To all that spirit conceives, they give a mold, persuading nature into visible moods. They lend a finite shape to infinite things. And this also suggests that what we see here in our world is, in a sense, a symbolic representation of something higher, of infinite things. Higher things are translated here into form, into a kind of a lower energies. And these beings, each power that leaps from the unmanifest, from higher above, leaving the largeness of the Eternal's peace, they seized and held by their precision eye. So they take these greater truths from above and then hone them, make them precise and give them a clear form. and made a figurant in the cosmic dance. This figurant, I don't know, it wasn't in my dictionary, but Narod's dictionary says it's something possessing form or shape, so just a figure.
It means that they are molding the souls to go along with the nature, basically, with the creation. Like the soul is coming and that's let's say unmolded to the nature, to this physical creation. So these gods are making them fit for the nature, this life. And that's a figure.
They're giving the material and vital forms of these things. It's free caprice, that freedom of the higher realms, they bound by rhythmic laws and compelled to accept its posture and its line in the wizardry of an ordered universe. So they take that freedom of the higher realms and create the ordered universe out of that. And somehow a universe that's representative of that higher, wider truth. A house, a dwelling place for the divine.
He is referring to the individual soul, this free caprice, this free soul is descending, and then now they are binding it to the universal laws.
Would you like to continue, Doug?
The all-containing was contained in form. Oneness was carved into units measurable. The limitless built into a cosmic sum. Unending space was beaten into a curve. Indivisible time into small minutes cut. The infinitesimal masked to keep secure the mystery of the formless cast into form. Invincibly, their craft devised for use, the magic of sequent number and science spell, design's miraculous potency was caught, laden with beauty and significance, and by the determining mandate of their gaze, figure and quality, equating, joined in an inextricable identity. On each event, they stamped its curves of law and its trust and charge of burdened circumstance, a free and divine incident, no more at each moment, willed or adventure of the soul. It lengthened a fate-bound mysterious chain, a line foreseen of an immutable plan, one step more in necessity's long march.
Thank you. We see the magic of their creative power, how they seem to manage the impossible. The all-containing was contained in form. Oneness was carved into units measurable. The limitless built into a cosmic sum. Unending space was beaten into a curve. Indivisible time into small minutes cut. The infinitesimal masked to keep secure the mystery of the formless cast into form. So they somehow managed to put into form the formless. And to do that, invincibly their craft devised for use the magic of sequent number and sign spell. Design's miraculous potency was caught, laden with beauty and significance. With this magic of numbers, it's quite interesting how you have something to say.
Yeah, I just want to share because the numbers brings. I was a maths teacher in Australia, so I was trying to explain how it's possible that infinite can fit into finite. And when I read this line, unending space was beaten into curve. This is how it works in the graph. If you put 0.5, it stays as a 0.5 between 1 and 0.5. But if you put 0.05, it starts the curve. Yeah? If you put, it's finite. 0 and 1 is a finite space. But 0.5 is in the middle. But 0.05, 0.0005, keep on going. It's an infinity inside. That's finite.
Yeah.
And it curves. So I used to teach this this concept that you can have infinity inside the finite. And when I saw this curve, I find like that part of sharing. Yes, this is possible. Here it says that unending space was beaten into that curve. Actually, 0.005 is still infinity.
Even the pi value, no?
Yeah.
22.7, the pi
Yeah,
value.
it keeps on.
It keeps on going.
Yeah.
So there is no end to on that division. The pi.
So it's a beaten into the infinity is inside the finite. Sorry. Infinity inside the finite.
Yeah, I think there's many different kind of magical things that can happen with these numbers. And I mean, we even think of, some of these formulas, mathematical formulas that people have discovered that underlie, different forms or.
Yeah, mathematically you can prove that 1 equal to 0.
0 equal to infinity.
Pardon?
0 equal to infinity.
Yes.
Vice versa.
Yeah, it's possible.
This next part also, this design's miraculous potency was caught, laden with beauty and significance. So design also can kind of capture some significance. And I think he says, further down, figure and quality equating, joined. So figure is like form, can join with qualities like peace. So you can express peace or love or beauty into forms. And the forms then can kind of awaken these qualities or, within us. And that's, I think, part of the job of an architect, to give us these feelings of qualities based on the forms of the architecture that we inhabit.
But they have to do it with this magic and this spell. So it has to have this spirit inside of it. We really can comprehend logically.
There was, I was reminded of this kind of mystical thing that Sri Aurobindo was doing, recorded in his diary in the record of yoga, of how, he was kind of exploring knowledge, new things of existence and that. And he would look at a newspaper lying on the table and he would see some words printed there. And then that would somehow, he would able to see through that some profound truth. So even just in the surface, appearances of nature can be hidden all these deep significances if we can kind of open ourselves to them. On each event, they stamped its curves of law and its trust and charge of burdened circumstance. A free and divine incident no more, at each moment willed or adventure of the soul, it lengthened a fate-bound mysterious chain, a line foreseen of an immutable plan, one step more in necessity's long march. So he seems to be suggesting that, again, these eternal truths were cast into a form or into an unfolding of events over time. So these creators are translating this freedom and eternity and infinity of the spirit into space and time, into forms. And he continues with that description in the next passage. Grace, would you like to continue?
A term was set for every eager power, restraining its will to monopolize the world, a groove of bronze prescribed for force and act, and shown to each moment its appointed place, for whirled inalterably in the spiral, huge time loop, fugitive from eternity. Inevitable their thoughts, like links of fate, imposed on the leap and lightning race of mind, and on the frail, fortuitous flux of life, and on the liberty of atomic things, immutable cause and adamant consequence. Idea gave up plastic infinity, to which it was born and now traced out instead, small separate steps of chainwork in a plot. Immortal once, now tied to birth and end, torn from its immediacy of errorless sight, knowledge was rebuilt from cells of inference into a fixed body flask imperishable. Thus bound it grew, but could not last and broke, and to a new thinking's body left its place.
Thank you. So here Sri Aurobindo seems to be talking about fate or karma, how everything is set by these gods into a sequence of unfolding fate. A term was set for every eager power restraining its will to monopolize the world. So all the forces are restrained and set into a pattern that they have to follow, a groove of bronze prescribed for force and act. So it's set into a hard groove in which it has to follow. For willed inalterably in the spiral, huge time loop, fugitive from eternity.
Very deterministic.
Yes, he's describing something very deterministic.
And yet we think that we have will. Sincerely.
Yes. This isn't the full story, as Sri Aurobindo speaks elsewhere. I was just working on, there is a line where he joins fate and chance and will, and how these are, in a way, instruments of the Spirit. And normally, I was just writing about this. It's quite interesting because normally we think of these kind of three different explanations for the unfolding of events in the world, and that they're kind of mutually contradictory. But he joins them into one, as if they're kind of three different aspects. And there's a line, a Godhead stands behind the brute machine. So if we think of fate as kind of a brute machine, and yet there's a Godhead standing behind it, operating that machine. And that Godhead has this free will. And then he speaks of it as standing beyond time and space, this Godhead. So we think of predetermination as if it's like determined earlier in time, and then unrolling itself, it's predetermined, it's determined earlier, and then unrolling. But if it's determined from beyond time and space, not earlier, then it can also, that Godhead can intervene within any point in time and space. So these three join, but he's describing this one particular aspect, which has a truth to it, but yet it's not the full truth.
These interventions are the chance, what we call chance are the interventions. Linking three, fate, free will, and chance. So basically what I understood is like chance is like intervention of the Godhead standing behind, beyond time and space, and he's operating the machine. So chance event in our life would be something like his beyond fate.
Yeah, we can look at it that way, but there's also another kind of chance that's operative, I think, within nature. I mean, because when we flip a coin, there is a chance that it's going to come up heads or tails. Okay, and we don't know, like we flip it 5 times, we're going to get we might get 3 heads and 2 tails, or we might get 4 heads and 1 tail. But if we flip it 1,000 times, then it's going to become very much close to 50-50, And so chance is also a principle operative, I think, within nature. But then, there is something, a soul beyond nature, that is also operative and that can control nature and that is beyond nature. So it introduces then another element into the play.
Because he puts the loop in all the time, and he puts in the spiral.
Yeah.
You have a spiral dynamic.
Mm.
It is always shifting in the multi-dimension.
Oh.
So any single perspective is not valid.
Right.
The chance of seeing, that is one chance, probability.
Right.
Another chance of seeing some random events which occur in our life.
Right.
That may be the intervention of
Could be.
some impulse from the power of the Godheads.
To say, whatever is happening is predefined and determined by the divine. That said, as a human, should I not plan?
That's why the third element is will. So, and then we, but then is he referring to the supreme will, or is he referring to our will? But one thing Sri Aurobindo says about will is that we are given the sense of our free will. And we make choices. We have to make choices in life, right? And those choices that we make also have consequences. And so practically, our own will has a reality for us. We have to take that into account, and we can't just ignore it. It has a practical reality. On the other hand, we can also think that perhaps my choice is determined by other factors, by my education, by my previous experiences in life, by my teachers, by my peers that I observe, by my circumstances in which I'm born. All of these things also may be influencing my choice. But nevertheless, we still have to make our choices in life, and the choices we make have consequences for us.
But we can't be attached to the outcomes of those choices. That's where we go off. We want it to go a certain way. We have to get into a choiceless awareness. So we make these things, but we are not attached to them. Because then it won't work.
And then there's another aspect also. Sri Aurobindo says, well, the only free will is the divine will. So that's free. But then also we can align our own will with the divine will. And in fact, that is the intention of evolution and of yoga, that we do align. And then our will becomes free and omnipotent, in a sense, like the divine will.
This is what actually I just wanted to understand. I have my will, and how do I align my will with the divine?
Well, integral yoga, but perhaps, in a practical way, we could say, to consider what might the divine will be, and follow that rather than my, present whim or desire that might be, stimulating me to do one thing or another. What would the Divine Mother say? People have kind of suggested, consider if the Mother were present there with you what would she suggest you do, or something like that. We can do that.
When it is silent presence, where silent mind is important. When your mind is silenced, all these disturbing thoughts, then you will know what is mother's will or your divine will. If you are emotionally or mentally active, your mind, then you won't get the divine will. That's one of the ways, I think, by silence the mind, we'll be closer to the divine will.
I suppose that's surrender also.
The whole karma yoga aspect of Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga is very much bound, tied to the will, and learning to express the divine will in our actions. And so there are a couple of the basic principles are to make an offering of what we do to the divine. So we're always referring our actions to the divine. We're always making a connection through that offering. And then a second, I think, important principle is to more and more feel that it's the divine power within one that is working within you. See, in a sense, in truth, we're carried by this divine force and moved by the divine force. Well, we may be moved by many different forces, but if we can feel ourselves being moved by the divine force, then that also aligns us with the divine will. Prisa?
I really find this looking at the coin thing. I play this game in a casino. So if you're using the free will, you will be betting on head or you'll be betting on tail, depending on your free will. You're free to decide. Sometimes you go for tail, sometimes you go for head. But imagine that head is a positive and the tail is a negative. But you only bet on head, no matter what. I'm going to bet on head. And then you have more and more positive experiences. There is no free will. You are aligning your will to the divine will. Whether it is going to be successful or not, you are going to align. That's what we need. That's how I see it.
Now, it reminds me of another very interesting scientific experiments with this. So we think of chance as something completely independent of consciousness, right? We think of it as materialistically determined or something. But actually, consciousness can have an effect on the flipping of coins. And there are scientific studies that have shown that if people are concentrating in a particular way, that the coin flip will follow. I mean, they have random number generators and have people concentrating on a particular number or something. That number will come up more often than by chance itself. So there's something. So that also suggests this kind of link between chance and will.
And if you have a strong willpower, and by looking at the wristwatch, you can stop the wristwatch from ticking. Same with the coin. So it's good to know that. What is the name of this experiment?
I don't know what the name of the experiment is, but the experimenter who's done a number of different studies in this is William Braud, Braud. He's a very interesting kind of scientist, psychologist. He was kind of trained in the traditional experimental methods of psychology in the U.S. He was at Iowa University, very kind of standard, But then he began doing these other kinds of experiments, very interesting things, also remote viewing. So people have experiences of rising out of their body their consciousness rising above, and he would put things, objects, above the physical body that were not in the sight of the person, but like on a shelf or something above. And yet the person then could identify. So he was kind of demonstrating the truth of these experiences, of these exteriorizations of consciousness from the body, able to demonstrate all different kinds of, kind of scientific experiments to demonstrate these kind of spiritual or, consciousness-based kinds of experiences.
And I shared this experience. Mother used to have a meeting with the woman group, and her son sneaked out and was looking what they're discussing through the window or something like that. Mother noticed. And she advised him, why son, you don't need to do this. You just come with your consciousness to them.
Oh.
So it is possible.
I've also seen experiments of this blindfolded reading.
Of what?
Like kids closing their eyes and able to read.
Oh. Uh-huh.
And I myself wrote a few words and they were like completely blindfolded. And my handwritten words, they could just sense it. There is much more power than the eyes, and there's this consciousness which can read. And there are ways to cultivate it. So this was, I saw in Hyderabad in one of the heartfulness centers.
Uh-huh.
And there are many such experiments. Consciousness beyond the body.
So I think we're going to stop there for today. And we have some music we can play.
in front of the ascending epiphany, world times enjoyers, favorites of world bliss, creators of matter by its stress of mind, whose subtle thoughts support unconscious life and guide the fountain of both events, stood there a race of young, keen-visioned gods, king children, born on wisdom's early plane, taught in her school world-making's mystic play.
Thanks to Sri Aurobindo.